Hi everyone, Shane R. Monroe here, and today we are going to get you up and running with EmuDeck, the latest version, all the trimmings. But if you have not yet watched and followed my Dolphin tricks and tips video, I would recommend you do that so that your Dolphin looks a little bit more like mine and you have access to certain things that you might not normally have. We're going to start our tour of duty here in the browser, your choice of browser, emudeck.com, and you're going to go to the downloads location. You can scroll down, or there is a link at the top that says download that'll get you down there. You're looking for the SteamOS version, and it tells you to copy the installer to your desktop. So we're just going to save it to the desktop, and make sure your browser doesn't strip the file extension away. It needs to be emudeck.desktop, and then we're going to save it to the desktop. Very quick, very easy, and we're done in the browser. Now, there are some EmuDeck tools out there that are going to require a sudo password. I recommend you set one right now. If you don't have one already, which you can see I do because it says it wants me to change it. But if you don't have one, set it and remember it. A lot of people don't do it and they let some other tool do it and then they don't know their password somewhere down the road. Go ahead and set it now. Little extra bonus tip and trick there for you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and double click and install EmuDeck. And after a brief moment of connecting to the internet and pulling down some stuff, it's going to go ahead and start the install. Now, we're going to use custom mode. It gives us the most opportunity to talk about all of the features, so we're going to go ahead and use custom mode instead of easy. Now, a lot of people pick SD card or internal storage, but that really limits what you can do later on. It's very difficult to move your installs around or to use multiple cards if you don't use this little trick. So what we're going to do is go to the location home in one of our windows here, and then we're going to go to the location where we want the emulation folder to be. In this case, I want it on my SD card, but I don't always want it at this location. See how this SD card has a designated number? If I put a different card in, it's going to have a different number. It's going to screw everything up. So what I'm going to do here is in my home folder, right here, my home folder, I'm going to create a Symlink. It's going to be a link to a file or directory, and we're going to link it right to the root where we want the emulation folder to be created. In this case, we want it to be done on the root of the SD card, but we don't necessarily always want to point there. For some reason, we might want to move it internal. We might want to move it to another card. This is going to save you a lot of time in the future. So now what we have is a home/emuvirtual folder that actually points to the SD card. Hopefully this is making sense to you. So we're going to select emuvirtual as our location and hit OK. There you go. So it looks like it's being stored internally, but it's not. It's really pointed over to the SD card, and we can change the install anytime we feel like it by merely changing a Symlink. All right, so this is all pretty boilerplate here. You're also going to notice that the missing emulators who shall not speak their name, they will be added later on. But go ahead and add what you want. Now, you may get quizzed like this a couple of times. Hey, you know, there's a RetroArch version and there's standalone. Do you want both or do you want one or the other? I recommend both because there are some things that work better with RetroArch or very convenient with RetroArch that are less convenient with a standalone emulator and vice versa. All right, so we have everything selected. We're going to continue, and this will optimize the configurations. There's no reason to unselect anything here. Just let it go. Okay, autosave. I'm not a fan. When you exit the game, it creates a save file automatically. Not a fan of that, but if you are, go for it. RetroAchievements allow you to earn trophies or achievements for classic or emulated games. Now, if you don't have an account, you'll have to go get one. I'm going to go ahead and sign into mine so that I'm ready to go. You can always do this again later if you choose to add it at a later time. All right, so we're done there. Do you like game bezels? I'm a fan because I don't like to stretch. So you'll see that I keep all of my aspect ratios as the default original aspect ratio. I don't stretch. I don't like widescreen hacks, especially not now with the OLED when you're actually, you know, drawing less on the screen or running less battery time if you've got this original aspect ratio. Not a fan of shaders. And the controller layout, you can either match the position layout or A is mapped to B, etc., etc. For some people, they may want this. I'm a controller layout match kind of person. Okay, so there's 3 front ends to launch games, one of which is right from your Steam library. One is from a Pegasus, which is new, and then Emulation Station, which is what we're going to use today. So it's going to ask you, what would you like your default theme to be? There's a whole bunch. I scrolled through a whole bunch of them, and then I realized it was just taking a bunch of time. So I'm just going to scroll through and pick one. I'm going to grab this one. And then your Pegasus default theme. Now, we're not going to set up Pegasus in this video. If you want to see more about Pegasus, let me know in the comments below. All right, so here's what we got going on. This is what it's going to do. All right, now this takes a long time. 4, maybe 5 minutes, depends on so many things, how fast your storage device is, all sorts of stuff. But as you can see right here, let's go take a look. If you look, there's that emulation folder right on the SD card as promised, but it's really routing through that local Symlink. Believe me, someday down the road, you're gonna go, oh, thank God I've got this. Believe me, it'll happen. All right, so the emulation folder is present and it's being fulfilled. EmuVirtual is taking care of business, and I think we're ready to go back and see how we're doing. Now, we're going to speed this up because it's literally like a 4-minute process, but I did want to show you something that could occur. Sometimes it'll look like everything is still working, but it's not. So right here it says Dolphin widescreen off, and doesn't seem to be ever moving. If you open up the detailed log, nothing's happening. If you look at the console window that is popped up in the background, suddenly you'll see what's holding up your install. So if you look down on the taskbar, there's that little console. Look at this. There's actually an alert that got hidden behind the install. This has to do with Dolphin Symlinks being clean, prevent potential breakage with other Symlinks, yada, yada, yada. Your ROMs have been removed. Your ROMs have been moved to the GC folder from the GameCube folder, if you happen to have GameCube files. Okay, so now once we clear that, the install continues. I cut like 5 minutes out because I was waiting. I'm going, I don't remember it taking this long, and that's why. Okay, so our post-installation status, everything looks good. Check, check, check. And let's move along. All right, so here's your opportunity to copy your games. Now, people are like, oh, I don't have a USB drive. Can I still do this? Listen, there's infinite number of ways to copy ROMs and BIOS files. Use a manual methodology. The automatic import's going to make you jump through hoops. Chances are likely you've got a hard drive already or a flash drive. So we're going to select manual copy, and then we're going to open the folder. There's the default folder, and it should be no surprise. It's on EmuVirtual, EmuDeck. It says here in the ROMs folder, you'll find a large assortment of folders. These folders correspond to consoles. GC is the folder for GameCube ROMs. BIOS folder, you'll place your BIOS directly inside the folder. So there's a lot of good stuff in here, but people next their way through, and I don't think they read stuff. They'll watch it on a video, but they won't read it themselves. How do you want to launch your games? If you're going to have 5 or 6 games, you can launch it from your Steam library. But anything else, I'm telling you, let's just use Emulation Station. And our way to get into Emulation Station is through Steam ROM Manager, injecting it into Steam. Now, you could start working here, but don't. Don't do anything after the install. Once you see this what's left, get out and run it again fresh, because you see there's a little notification on there. That's wrong. Just go back in and everything will be fine. I could have saved you some time there. Hopefully that's the case. So we're going to go ahead and run EmuDeck fresh again. And here we go. Now there could be another hotfix, right? There could be all sorts of things that pop up, and look at there is one. Hotfix was pushed to fix ROMs launching into the emulator instead of the ROM directly. This hotfix fixes that. This one just didn't happen to pop up behind the screen. Yes, of course we want that. All right. Now it's also saying that there's an upcoming Emulation Station update that is already here that removes Yuzu support. So we're going to go ahead and say yes, we want that put back in. And when you go to run Steam ROM Manager, which we need to do to inject Emulation Station into Steam, it's going to tell you it's going to close Steam, and it's going to run the Steam ROM Manager. Now, for this pass right now, we don't have any ROMs. We don't have any BIOS files yet, but we do want to get Emulation Station Desktop Edition injected. So we're going to turn off all the other parsers except this one, ESDE. Then we're going to hit Preview and Parse. Okay, so we've only asked it to look for one thing, and that's Emulation Station. Now you can see that we're going through the artwork here, and this isn't even the right artwork. It's because the name recently changed and it's all confusing. We'll just leave the default, which is pretty much nothing, and we're going to click Save to Steam. That's going to go ahead and inject it into the Steam library proper, so we can actually launch that whenever we feel like it. And let's go take a look. So if we go into Steam, you'll find an entry down here called ESDE, and that's it. This is what runs Emulation Station. So let's go ahead and run it. Now, you're probably thinking, but there's no games. And you're right, there are no games. So don't mess with any of this. I just wanted to show you in case you ran across it. Just exit out. We're going to go ahead and do the ROMs thing and the BIOS things here now. So as long as they're in the right spot, as long as they're in the BIOS folder, as long as they're in the ROMs folder in the correct directory, right? As long as the game is for the particular system is in the right folder, all of this will work fine. Now there are a few concessions, right? ROMs cannot be compressed in certain formats. We'll go over some more of this in a minute. Now, BIOS files. Now, I've copied over from my computer all my BIOS files and all the ROMs that I want to put over here. So I already have a BIOS folder in the old folder. It's not going to be there for you, but all of my BIOS files were backed up into my SD card. So I'm going to grab all of these and I'm going to copy them over to the BIOS folder in the EmuDeck installation folder. But before we do that, let's take a look at how you can tell whether you've got the newer system's BIOS files correct. So right here inside of EmuDeck is something called the BIOS checker. And the BIOS checker is one of your best friends because you're going to run this guy and it's going to tell you exactly what you're missing. You don't have a PlayStation 1 BIOS, you don't have a PlayStation 2 BIOS, you're missing that, you're missing Sega CD, you're missing all these things. And they'll even tell you a lot of interesting things about BIOS files. They have to be in the right case. They have to be the right checksum. They have to be the right location, right? There's all sorts of things that you need to pay attention to. So that's how you check to see if those are fixed. Most of the things before PlayStation 1 don't require a BIOS at all. So now we're back in my BIOS folder that has all my backed up BIOS files, and I'm going to copy them right into Emulation BIOS. Now, some of these are going to overwrite, so I have to select all, right into the folders, select all, overwrite. So this is all standard stuff here. There's already some things that are here. All right, now I've got all of my BIOS files, and I've got BIOS files for everything, just to make sure that I got it all taken care of. But let's take a look at our BIOS checker now. Hey now, we've got pretty much everything here except for that one who shall not speak its name. All right, we're going to talk about that later. All right, so now let's do some ROMs. Now, we're not going to get crazy here. ROMs are a little more tricky. They have to be in either uncompressed or the appropriately designated format. So PS3s are very strange. PS2s can be in CHD format. Your Nintendo games, your old NES games can be zipped, but they can't be 7-zip. They cannot be RAR'd. You can see here, I'm going to copy over some PlayStation Classic or PS1 games. These have already been compressed into the CHD format. I highly recommend any of your disk-based images are in the CHD format. We're now going to copy these CHDs over to the ROM/PSX folder. Don't ask me where to get these, I can't help you. Now, I will tell you that if you have ISO images or bin queues, that there is a tool in EmuDeck we're going to look at later that will help you convert those into CHDs, and you'll save a ton of space. CHD is like compressed hard drive files, so you want that. All right, so we're going to copy those files on over. And again, this could be copying it from anywhere, right? You could have downloaded these. You could have gone to your NAS and got them. You could have copied them over with SSHFS, like what I did. You could have brought it over on an SD card. You could have brought it over on a flash drive. It doesn't matter. All right, so now that we've actually moved some ROMs over and some BIOS files, we should be able to do something here. Let's see what we got. If we go to Emulation Station, hey, look at that. Now there's a PlayStation category we can actually select. Perfect. So what we have in there are the 5 games that we copied over. There's no metadata, there's no artwork or anything like that. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's just make sure that one of these things works. This is a great side-scrolling shooter, Einhander. I love this game. I use it for all my demos. And you can see with the first run, it's creating memory cards and all this other stuff. You probably won't see a lot of that, but you can see, hey, look at that. We're getting the Sony PS1 logo. We're not going to do a whole bunch here. I just want you to see that the game actually loads and starts. Now, if you get a black screen and it doesn't load at all, your ROMs are probably bad. Your BIOS files could be bad. It could be a number of different things. Emulation can be tricky. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this thing. I'm in desktop mode, so the built-in controls don't work as well. So I'm just using the mouse and keyboard a little bit here to get out of that. Okay. So let's take a look now at how you would get that game injected into Steam. This is not my preferred method. If you write to me and ask me for help with Steam ROM Manager, I'm probably not going to be your guy. But listen, if enough people cry for it in the comments, you know, listen, I believe in giving my people what they want. So let's go to the Steam ROM Manager again. This is what we use, remember, to inject Emulation Station into Steam. Now we're going to use it to inject PlayStation 1 games into Steam. There's a couple of reasons why you may want to do this. So remember, all of our parsers are off. So I'm going to scroll down until I find not only the system, but also the emulator that I want to use. So PlayStation, come on, a little bit more, DuckStation, right? DuckStation is the emulator I want to use, not RetroAchievements. So I'm going to select DuckStation PlayStation. Okay, and now I'm going to parse just like we did before. This time, though, you're going to see ESDE, hey, along with the games. Now, you can change the artwork. You can do all sorts of things in here before you inject it. There is a lot of stuff you can do with Steam ROM Manager. It's just not my thing. I like having everything inside one central emulation hub. But you can add local images. You can refresh images, save the image that you're seeing there. And then you can also use these include and exclude features to make sure you're only putting in what you want into Steam. It's easier to put them in than it is to take them out, especially in quantity. If you put too many of these things in, your Steam Deck is going to drag to a crawl. What's the number? I've seen a couple hundred entries cause problems, right? So we're going to go back to desktop mode real quick through the magic of nonlinear editing, and we're going to go ahead and see if we can find Einhander, along with the others, already injected in progress. Okay, so we go to our library, and if you look under collections, you'll now see we have things like Emulation and Sony PlayStation added to our regular Steam ones. Now get out of here, no Chrome. There you go, look at that. If we go under non-Steam, we see the entries that got injected. Very cool. All right, and we can go ahead and make sure that it runs from here. You can also see that you can change the joystick layout for individual games. This is the only time I would ever use Steam to manage my emulated titles, as if I had to use a different control scheme or a different setup. Otherwise, I am perfectly happy. Emulation Station, along with EmuDeck, has good custom configurations for every system out there, and I love it. All right, so now let's go ahead and see if we can get some scrapes here. Now, we're going to go ahead and say scrape just the PlayStation. Well, that's the only games that we have, so it's perfect. And we're going to use something called Screen Scraper. Now, there's two locations, Screen Scraper and the Games DB. Screen Scraper is a little slower, but it's got more stuff, including movies and other stuff, videos. You will need an account if you're going to scrape more than a few hundred a day, and you're going to need a paid account if you want to do more heavy lifting jobs. Now, it's very cheap. It's like $3 a month or something. I went ahead and entered my credentials so we're not interrupted by any sort of API limitations. So here we go. We're going to speed this up a little bit, and you can see it's pulling metadata, pictures, box art, video clips. It's great. Now, this can take forever, and I recommend you back this stuff up. I'll have another video on that once you get everything set up the way you like, just in case disaster strikes. All right, so look at this. How beautiful is that? Your artwork looks great. It's got little animated preview movies. This is the way I like to see it. This is the way I like to experience emulation. I don't like my emulation just tucked into Steam like just some other game. But again, your mileage may vary, void where prohibited. Okay, so now I have copied over a ROM for 3DS and one for the other guy, right? So I've got a game now for each of those two platforms. Now, right now, they're impossible to use. Now, I'm going to help you restore this emulator. This emulator should be named exactly this, and you're going to have to get it yourself. I can't tell you where to get it, but I can tell you it needs to go in the home/applications folder, and it has to be named exactly what you see here. So we're going to move that into place. All right, there it is. And we're going to execute it once from that location. And we're going to say that's okay. And it's saying that we're missing certain things to make it run, right? Now, we're not going to have any anonymous data collected. That's what got you into trouble. All right, so one of the things. So let's go in here and go File, Open Folder, and then there's going to be this folder. This is where you need to put those things we were talking about. Now, I copied them over via SSH, and I'm going to copy them right into that folder. Okay. I'm not getting into deep details on all of this on purpose. Just be lucky I'm covering it all. So let's go back in here. Now that we have the emulator restored and we have those files restored, this should work. Let's check it out. Looking good so far. Hey, there you go. It's launching. And again, to avoid the evil demons, I'm going to get out of here as quickly as possible. Now, the next thing we need to do is restore the 3DS emulator, which I will also not name. Go into Applications again and drag that app image into that folder, the same way we did with the other one. And it still has to be named exactly what you see here, case sensitive. So we're going to move that over. Okay, great. Now we have that emulator restored. Now, we don't have to do anything weird for this one. We don't have to put any BIOS files or special files in air bunnies, air quotes, to make this work. Now, both of these are raw configurations for the emulator. So that's why you're seeing some of this weird stuff, right? So we're going to close that. It's launching, but it's not launching full screen. It's kind of hosed. I bet the controls don't work, right? It's working. I mean, the emulator has been restored and the game will run, it just won't run very well. So go back into EmuDeck and we're going to, now that the emulators are restored, go back to Manage Emulators, and suddenly those two emulators are there. Reset the configuration for each one in turn. And it'll go ahead and give you some other information here, right? So go ahead and say okay. That configuration now gets reset to what EmuDeck would have originally done with it had it still had the ability to install these things. See, the BIOS checks out, and we're going to reset the configuration here as well. This will make sure that both of these emulators are working exactly the way that EmuDeck wants them to work. So let's go in and take another look here. We're in desktop mode again. If you didn't see, we did a little switcheroo there. Let's go ahead and take a look at 3DS again. Things should run just a little bit better. Now, this still didn't quite go full screen. Now, I don't play a lot of 3DS, so you're going to have to probably play with this just a little bit on your own. But the emulator is here, it's up, and it's working. Now, you may have to assign a key or something to get out of here. But, hey, listen, it's back, it's working. That's all I'm going to do with this. And once again, we'll check and make sure that once we reset the configuration on that emulator, that it's actually doing full screen the way it should. Everything's fine. I'm just going to exit out before it runs because we know it works. Excellent. Well, that wasn't that hard, was it? It's just getting the files. That's going to be all about you. Let's take a look at a couple of things inside of EmuDeck that's worth looking at. Obviously, there's something called the EmuDeck Store. This is free stuff. These are free games you can download for all these systems, totally legal. You don't have to worry about getting a virus. You don't have to worry about, clicking through porn ads, whatever. So yeah, I would definitely recommend checking that out. Here you go. Once again, we can confirm where we installed everything. Let's see, what else do we have here? Changing screen resolutions, right? If you want to make any sort of changes, you can do that. This got locked up somehow. There we go. So if you go in here, you can see what all the default resolutions are. So if you're going to primarily play docked or through an external monitor, you'll want to make changes there. And again, RetroAchievements, I already got it here, and it just told me it was successful again. That seems to be kind of a bug, but whatever. So yeah, if you decide you want to get RetroAchievements, here's that EmuDeck compression tool I was telling you about. So this will actually walk through all of your compatible folders, and it will help you out. It'll convert stuff to what it needs to be, and that's good. That's great. That's what you want. And there's other tools here, again, like power tools, gyroscope. Those are going to probably require that SUDO access we were talking about. But listen, this has been a long enough video. If you like what you saw, please like, subscribe, hit the bell. You guys know what to do. If you want to see more videos on other topics of this nature, please let me know in the comments below. Always like to hear from my viewers. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.